Welcome to the scene-wise analysis of Act 4, Scene 7 of the play Hamlet, Prince of Denmark. The scene is of 193 lines and one of the black scenes in the play, replete with sinister and morbid thoughts, as it reveals the villainous nature of King Claudius in its entirety. It is definitely one of the most dramatic scenes, as it reveals the deceitful and the persuasive nature of King Claudius as he plots for the third time against Hamlet, as he makes this time Laertes his accomplice in his foul play. It is indeed one of the poignant scenes too, as it reveals the death of Ophelia by drowning. The scene opens while King and Laertes conspire in privacy against Hamlet, who are later joined by the Queen Gertrude herself. The scene is in fact the direct continuation of Scene 6, which ends with the King Claudius trying to appease the furious Laertes. The king succeeds to win the confidence of Laertes as he clears the foul fog of suspicion through his clever suggestions, which convince Laertes about Hamlet's role behind the murder of Polonius. But Laertes has initial doubts about Claudius's intentions, since he suspects why the royal couple still puts up with Hamlet and has not yet proceeded against him. But King Claudius states his two plausible motives that forces him to tolerate Hamlet's antics. The first motive is the Queen's devotion towards Hamlet and Claudius' intimacy for Gertrude, and the second motive springs from his ulterior motive not to lose the favor of his subjects, who has greater estimation for the young prince. If you can recall Ophelia's soliloquy, she hails him as the glass of fashion and the observed of all observers. But Laertes still remains undeterred in his decision, and King Claudius insinuates another means to whet young Laertes' anger by offering him support to fulfill his desire for vengeance. Meanwhile, the messenger enters with letters. The messenger has letters for the king and the queen, and the king is astonished to know that the letters are from Hamlet. The messenger tells him that he received the letters from Claudio, who in turn received from the sailors. As he lets the messengers go, he allows Laertes to stay with him as he reads the letter. This is in fact a conscious move by the king to win his confidence more in his favor. The letter reveals Hamlet's speedy return to the shores of Denmark, as he is eager to share with the king the circumstances that led to his sudden and more strange return to Denmark. Claudius is so much flabbergasted by the letter that he can't figure out if he comes alone or with his friends. Deep at heart, he might also feel guilt and fears if his treacherous move is known to Hamlet now. Claudius is so much troubled by the information that he asks Laertes if he could advise him on this issue. That is a very clear indication of how much Claudius now depends on Laertes, because he did not want Hamlet to return to Denmark. But Laertes, on the other hand, is eager to face him to vent his fury. The king infuses the spirit of revenge in Laertes by reminding him of his duty to avenge his father's murder through his devilish words, as we quote the words uttered by Claudius. What would you undertake to show yourself indeed your father's son, more than in words. We find King Claudius continues to egg-on him to undertake revengeful action. Meanwhile, Claudius devises a new stratagem to kill Hamlet by Lytus himself, as though by accident, so that it won't cause a slight spark of suspicion of foul play in the mind of his affectionate mother Gertrude. And Lytus, in his mad, revengeful fury, expresses his readiness to act as an instrument to fulfill Claudius's plans. Claudius spurs Lytus by praising his skill at fencing to challenge Hamlet for a duel, during when Lytus would hurt Hamlet with his sword, which is poisoned by the king. Lytus is ready to materialize the treacherous plan to action as he says the lines, "I will do it, and for that purpose I will anoint my sword. I bought an unction of a mountebank." Here we find the readiness of Lytus to poison his sword in order to ensure the death of Hamlet. He therefore decides to smear the blade in an unction of which a mere prick is enough to ensure Hamlet's death. Therefore, Claudius is all set to seal the fate of Hamlet this time, that he makes it doubly assured that he decides to offer him a poisoned chalice as well to assure his death. Exactly then, they are interrupted by a sudden sound and fury as the queen brings in more sad tidings. She reveals them about Ophelia's death by drowning in a stream beneath a willow as she walked in ecstasy, holding flower wreaths, and fell into the stream. Young Lytus is now burdened by a double act of vengeance, since he needs to avenge the death of his father and sister Ophelia, who succumbed to unnatural deaths, and therefore he leaves the scene by pledging his act of revenge. The murky scene ends as the king persuades the queen with his words, as we quote the lines, "Let's follow Gertrude, how much I had to do to calm his rage. Now fear I this will give it start again, therefore let's follow." So we find here how King Claudius is trying to convince Queen Gertrude that the cause of Lytus and the reason for his fury is more justified than that of Hamlet, and therefore he should be supported.